Ghost stories. You've heard of them. Spooky tales of spirits emerging from the abyss to disturb the living, to cause chaos, or just be annoyances. Folklore. You've heard of it too. Wherever you live has some myths and legends about it. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. My town has a giant century-old abandoned hotel with a bunch of ghost stories around it because how it's caught fire 3 times. Did I know that? No. But it's there. These two things intertwine quite a lot. You usually don't see folklore without some kind of spirit in it, and this story is no exception. It's the story of the Bell Witch, arguably one of the most well-documented and well-known legends in American history. What started as a family being harassed by a spirit evolved into a mess of many news articles and rumors, a fair few books, and even whole movies. It's the pinnacle of American ghost stories, and it's what we're talking about today. So, join us as we dive into the history behind this bizarre haunting, the aftermath, and what it's like now. And as always, welcome to Hollowpatch. Howdy howdy! It's Zee again, your local pumpkin-headed artist, writer, and part-time necromancer. Today's video is special because I'm joined by my good friend Random this time.
Hello! Very nervous and very excited to be here.
As stated before, this video is about the Bell Witch, a legend originating from Tennessee about a family being harassed by a mysterious, powerful spirit. Alongside the family involved, it involves the Bell Witch Cave and the famous Red Book. The broader strokes, anyway. Yeah, so originally I wanted to do a nitty-gritty deep dive into this whole thing, but almost instantly realized there's way too much to fit into what could be a 10 to 15 minute video. One of the biggest sources for this legend, the Red Book, is also several hundred pages long, and as much as I'd like to sit down and tell you everything in it, I simply do not have the time to do it. So this is only going to be about the meat of the story, and if you want to do further research yourself, it's very easy to find a copy of the Red Book online and plenty of places talking about it. One final thing, if you like this video, please subscribe or check out our Tumblr blogs. Me, Random, and others work hard to make these and we're new to it, so every little bit of support helps. With that, let's get into it. Believe it or not, the family involved with the haunting is just as interesting as the legend itself, this family being the Bell family. They were a group of farmers with a large farm on the bank of the Red River in Tennessee, highly respected by the community, fairly wealthy, and obviously owning slaves, but we'll put a pin in that and get back to it later. Despite being a regular Christian family, they were more Mormon-sized. In no particular order, we have John Bell, Lucy Bell, John Bell Jr., John Bell, Lucy Bell, John Bell Jr., Drury Bell, Ether Bell, Benjamin John Bell, Lucy Bell, John Bell Jr., Drury Bell, Ezra Bell, Benjamin Bell, Richard Bell, and Elizabeth Bell, who went by Betsy. There were 2 other children, but neither were present during the hauntings and both died rather young. Betsy Bell was also engaged to a man named Joshua Gardner, a detail that will be important later on. Of course, there were also a few slaves named in the story. While I imagine there's many more, only 4 were definitively named, those 4 being Dean, Dean's wife Kate, a boy named Harry, and one named Anki. Okay, yeah, I feel like Anki is something offensive, and I don't know if it is.
I was literally gonna say.
I have no way of knowing.
I was gonna say like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
Anki?
Yeah.
The fuck?
Like, given how the later book goes, I have no idea if anything I'm unfamiliar with is offensive or not. It is an actual coin flip.
Yeah.
I'm terrified. Get canceled before I even started.
Oh no!
I have no idea.
Zee cancelled.
The family didn't originate from Tennessee. Instead, John and Lucy Bell, along with a few of their children, moved there after a series of failed harvests. They almost immediately built a good reputation, being among the wealthiest and friendliest in the area. You could argue they were the most well-liked of Robertson County's residents, barring a later incident where John Bell Sr. will later be excommunicated from the local church for reasons unknown. For Robertson County itself, it was founded on April 9, 1796 by James Robertson. It was mostly an agricultural area, gaining a notable slave population after farmers started growing tobacco and raising cattle. At the time of the hauntings, there were few in the area, so it was very much an everyone knows each other situation. There's not a whole lot to note about it otherwise. I mean, it was pretty much your standard pre-Civil War Southern community. You can probably figure out the rest from there. Of course, if Robertson County really was just a standard Southern community, then it would have been home to the infamous hauntings that terrorized the Bell family. Hauntings that are still talked about to this day.
Ooh.
The haunting started out relatively innocuous. John Bell saw a strange, rabbit-like creature on his farm, and then simple scratching noises started occurring at night. The Bell family assumed that it was just a rat at first, that the scratching soon became too loud and too strong for a rat. The sounds were compared to that of a dog scratching his claws against the walls, and around that time more things started happening. The family's bed sheets were pulled almost every night while they slept. Sounds akin to falling stones and chairs started occurring, with strange gulping and lip-smacking noises sounding out. It was noted by John Bell that these noises seemed to move from room to room, and they happened between 1 and 3 in the morning. rooms were rearranged and cleaned several times, but they couldn't find any sort of animal crawling about. But by this point, they began to suspect the cause wasn't entirely natural, especially because the family began to complain about their hair being tugged at night. Sometimes it was a small tug, and sometimes it was a strong, painful one. Because this is an old southern ghost tale, you can bet that their first attempt to drive out the hauntings was through praying and doing Bible-y stuff. But this did pretty much nothing. In fact, it seemed to make these odd occurrences happen more. Directly after this, the culprit answered questions related to numbers by making raps on the walls. Lights would flicker across the Bell property, and any family members who came home late had sticks and stones thrown at them as they walked. It appeared that this was not just any spirit, it was a spirit with a vengeance. Or just a pissy one, the court's still out on that. Neighbors began to visit the Bell family, and reported occasionally hearing what sounded like someone attempting to speak. This got louder, and louder, and it evolved into incoherent mumbles. One day, a friend of the Bell family asked, "What are you?" aloud to the hauntings, and in response, one clear sentence was spoken.
I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but now I've been disturbed.
So, Randa, what do you think of this so far?
I have like
You definitely didn't read the script.
I have 3 jokes that I want to make.
You definitely didn't proofread the script 3 times beforehand.
No. The gulping and lip smacking noises, I physically cringed, imagine just somebody walking around, I don't want to make the noises because that's gross, but you know what I mean? Yeah, just around your house. Disgusting.
You're trying to sleep, and then you just hear
Gross.
The voice can be known as the Bell Witch, sometimes referred to as just the Witch, or Kate, but we'll put a pin in that and come back later. It was known to be extremely rude, throwing out insults, beating people that felt like a wood paddle, slapping people, pulling their hair, being incredibly religious, predicting the future, and playing tricks. One such trick was this time, where the Bell family asked what it wanted and it said it belonged to a Native American burial ground, but a tooth from its grave was now on the floorboards. The floor was torn up and sifted through, but when nothing was found, it cackled and revealed its lie. Another trick was that the spirit was a person who buried treasure nearby and died before they could get it. Hearing this, the family sent out a few men to dig it up at the exact location, and when they had toiled away for hours, the witch again revealed the lie and laughed at the men for being so easily fooled. But as it turns out, the witch wasn't entirely alone in these endeavors. A part of the legend that's quite glossed over is the witch family that the spirit allegedly sent to harass the Bells. In fact, the main source of this legend, the Red Book, only ever mentions them once and never again despite their importance. This family consisted of 4 characters, each having a distinct voice and personality. These 4 were as follows: Black Dog, Mathematics, Syphocryphy, and Jerusalem. And, yeah, okay. I don't... Syphocrypty... Damn it! Syphocryphy doesn't seem to be an actual word. I don't...
Oh.
I don't know where it came from. I looked, I tried. There's nothing about it. I even, in desperation, I even, use a dictionary tool on Google Docs.
Oh.
And nothing came up. I don't know what it means. I don't know I don't know who came up with that. Where it fits among the rest of these.
Sypocryphy? I don't even know.
I honestly have just been reading it as Syphocryphy. It could be Syphocryphy, Sypocryphy, Sypocryphy. I don't... Black Dog was the leader of the bunch, described as having a harsh, feminine voice, while Mathematics and Syphocryphy had softer but still distinctly feminine voices. Jerusalem, on the other invisible hand, sounded like a boy. They would appear all at once, using offensive language and insults, all the while declaring they would follow the family everywhere they went, and singing songs. The 4 would almost always eventually fight with one another, and Black Dog would assume the role of a peacekeeper. Rarely they would seem drunk, even more rarely they would actually be relatively civil. Not much is known about these parts, other than that they would sing very nicely when this happened. Despite their perceived importance in appearing nightly, it seems they disappeared one night and never came back. There's not a very good time frame for when they appeared, and even less for when they stopped, but after this point, the witch continued its hauntings on its own. Oh hey Rita, we're now on a casual section, as outlined in this script. How do you feel?
I love that the witch just, sent the whole family on this other family. It's just hey, these people... Help me bully these people.
Help me kill a man. And also pull his daughter's hair while you're at it. It's not really known what they had specifically related to Kate. I think some kind of imply that some I was reading implied that it was like part, like they were kind of a family 2K, and others kind of implied they were just like a group of demons or something.
So they're
I
either
don't.
so they're either a family or a punk rock band.
Now for a slight tangent, one that I feel the need to put in because it's a fairly large part of the legend and to talk about just how badly this legend is aged. Normally, I think it's important to remember that some folklore was made at a different time, that even if it's badly aged, that it's a good look into what the mindset of the past is. But I have to make an exception here for numerous reasons. One being that the display of racism is so atrocious that it's hard to ignore, another being it's a major part of the legend, and because you have to buy the primary source of the legend, which contains tons of offensive language and is poorly written even in its re-release. Finally, it's also because I'm encouraging that you, the viewer, do more research yourself if you're interested because this video covers the broad strokes, and I don't think it's very fair to not warn said viewer about it. Are we on the same page? Good, good. The witch didn't just interact with the Bell family, it also interacted with their slaves, albeit rarely. I'm not going to quote the spirit directly because it has a slur in it, but it allegedly hated the smell of their kind. Slaves in turn avoided the witch because they feared it. As any rational person would probably do. Most of them, anyway, because the most notable slave throughout the story apparently encountered the spirit many times while working. This person was simply known as Dean, described as one of the Bell family's best slaves for his strength and skill with an axe. He would encounter the spirit in the form of a black dog, sometimes with 2 heads, 1 head, or no head. It would speak to him sometimes, and Dean eventually began to carry a witch ball made with foxfire in his wife Kate's hair. And on a side note, I have no idea what foxfire is. The best I can do for you is A, it's the fungal phenomenon, 2, these little foxfire water lilies, which are like tropical, so I don't know how I got a hold of it, and or 3, it means foxglove, and they're referring to foxglove instead, which I guess would probably make a lot more sense than the other 2. However, this ball seemed to be useless, as the witch apparently managed to beat him with a stick one day anyhow, destroying the ball. Another time, Dean was apparently turned into a mule by the spirit while he had a new witch ball. The Bell family and others completely dismissed these claims, saying that their kind had a wide berth of imagination. The author of the Red Book was more inclined to believe Dean, but not without saying more badly aged things about it. Other incidents include the witch beating a younger slave while being late to start a fire, and another where Lucy Bell hid another slave under her bed, which the spirit knew and spat on the slave until she rolled out from under the bed. This was all done, of course, while it screamed slurs, because of course it was. Returning to the shenanigans committed against the Bells themselves, an investigator visited the family's home one day. This man went by the name of Detective Williams. Not much is described about him, but he apparently boasted about his work a lot, chatting constantly and confident this would be solved easily. The spirit, meanwhile, went quiet, returning to simple scratching noises at night upon the detective's arrival. This went on for a few nights, before Williams declared that it must be a trick that the Bells created to draw in people and money. This offended John Bell Sr. greatly, yet it made the witch finally speak. It said it would deal with Williams, and said no more. That night, when Williams prepared to sleep, he was suddenly grabbed, beaten with what felt like a wooden paddle, and scratched senseless. It stopped when the rest of the family woke up, and apparently all in under 2 minutes. The next morning, Williams left in a hurry, allegedly being chased by the witch for quite some time. On a side note, do you think if this happened in like Texas or some other southern area, or in fact Mexico, do you think it would have been with a wooden sandal instead?
The chancla. Yes, I do.
Williams was actually not the only notable investigator during the hauntings, for later in the hauntings a magician visited. This man went by the name of Dr. Mize and spent a lot of his time doing magic to entertain the family. Curiously, the spirit went quiet again, and Mize declared that it would not trouble the family as long as he was there. However, the witch was actually present, and began to incessantly ask Mize questions. At first, Mize ignored it, and then began answering, to which the witch started to criticize his work. For some reason, the spirit seemingly knowing more than he did scared Dr. Mize away, which was followed by Kate beating him as he left. It's almost tradition at this point. Before the finale of this famous ghost story, an interesting flip side about this chatty, violent, slur-screaming ghost is mentioned, that being its relationship with Lucy Bell. Lucy decided to treat the ghost with respect, doing her best to keep it from harming her children too much. As a result, the witch actually liked Lucy, and this was shown in an incident during the legend that's not really talked about. Once, Lucy became extremely ill, becoming bedridden. The witch stopped its usual antics, its mood turning rather sorrowful. It would often remark on her illness, and stayed almost exclusively in her bedroom, talking to her and offering to help in any way it could. Sometimes it would sing in a voice that was allegedly beautiful, and Lucy never neglected to compliment it. Other times, Lucy would say she was too sick to talk, and the spirit would surprisingly go quiet, staying quiet while she slept. Though as illness progressed, Miss Bell lost her appetite, which worried her family and the witch. Seeing neighbors attempting to bring things to get Lucy to eat, the witch one day told Lucy to hold out her hands, dropping a handful of hazelnuts in her arms. Upon Miss Bell remarking that she hadn't the strength to crack them, a cracking noise was heard, and cracked hazelnuts were dropped in her arms instead, the witch urging her to eat. This was repeated by the witch again sometime later, this time with grapes. Lucy will recover, but it's not mentioned if it was because of the witch or if it was natural. What is known, however, is that illness would cast this wicked grin on another of the Bell family instead. Oh, dedicated casual time. This is probably gonna get me copyrighted just singing this.
Diversity win.
And I don't.
The ghost that screams slurs is a lesbian.
Honestly, I feel like I could just pardon the Yuri joke as the casual break and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So, we're finally at the end of this story. This entire time, both John Bell Sr. and Betsy Bell were both experiencing attacks. In the latter's case, these attacks consisted of randomly losing her breath and feeling like she was choking, followed by fainting. These would last for about 30 to 40 minutes, and Betsy would get up like nothing happened. According to the witch, it was because of her engagement to Joshua Gardner, but surprisingly these eventually stopped happening altogether. The same cannot be said about John Bell Sr. His attacks were different, being that his jaw would suddenly lock up, his tongue would swell, he would experience seizures, and pain. Originally he would recover like nothing happened, but as these attacks got stronger, he got weaker. He stopped leaving his property, and a few weeks before his death, he stopped leaving his house altogether. John became bedridden, and the night before his death, the Bell family found a smoky vial of liquid in the medicine cabinet. While it differs from account to account, it's thought the spirit used it to poison John. The Red Book says that the witch admits to it, others say it never did.
Also, I'm looking at like the symptoms that these people had. I'm not sure what was going on with Betsy, but it looks like John Bell might have just had like I don't know how to pronounce it. Tetanus.
Huh. I didn't know tetanus did that.
It causes muscle contractions, particularly in your jaw and neck, commonly known as lockjaw, and it can also cause muscle spasms.
I mean, you get tetanus from rusty metal, right?
Yeah, and you worked on a farm, right? So that's like...
yeah, of course there would be like rusty metal somewhere.
Yeah.
The poison was also tested on a stray cat, where it died in a matter of seconds. The vial was then thrown into the fireplace, where it burst into a great deal of blue flames. John Bell died soon afterwards, and the witch apparently sang and rejoiced during his funeral. After this point, the spirit soon left, having fulfilled its oath to haunt the man until the very end. And scene. Okay, that was a lot. Like, a lot. But, unfortunately, there's more. Because now we get to talk about the Red Book, the thing I've been mostly pulling from this entire time and have already noted as being very poorly aged. It's pretty much the main source of the entire legend barring a few news clippings, which is a shame because it's fallen under great scrutiny since release. We'll start off with the author himself, Martin Van Buren Ingram. Ingram was born on June 20th, 1832 in Kentucky, about 12 years after John Bell's death and the spirit's departure. He took over his family farm at the age of 17 and developed an interest in journalism soon after. It was during this he would begin to write the Red Book, titled An Authenticated History of the Bell Witch, using notes and information he gathered from a man named James Allen Bell, who was the grandson of John Bell Sr. This would also include notes from Richard Bell, who was James' father. James states that his father gave these notes to him shortly before his death, and Ingram would later use a letter James wrote as the book's introduction. Notably, its publishing was delayed by a day because the witch allegedly came to visit, singing songs, laughing, groaning, and clapping. So, what of the book itself? Well, it's very poorly written. There are numerous run-on sentences and grammatical errors littered about, and quite frankly, it was a nightmare to read. For the people out there who read fanfic, do you ever click on a fic and just see a big old block of text with no paragraph breaks whatsoever? Imagine that, but for an actual book, it's held in somewhat high regard. I've already talked about the offensive language within it, lots of slurs writing out the testimony of slaves with excessive accenting that makes it very hard to read, general racism, and even some sexism and wording that wouldn't fly high with the disabled today. It of course also heavily promotes Christianity, which depending on the person you are, we might find to be a problem. Personally, I found it quite annoying. Of course, the book and the story it presents have also been put under scrutiny over the years. For example, no one's ever actually seen the notes Ingram acquired, and some think they never existed in the first place. There's accusations of the book using terms that didn't exist at the time of the haunting, accusing Ingram of pretending to be one of the Bells, the strange decision to wait until all primary witnesses were dead before Ingram got to write it, no other physical evidence, plain fraud, and the strange inclusion of former President Andrew Jackson for seemingly no reason at all.
Wait.
You heard that right. The book contains an entire chapter dedicated to Andrew Jackson, alleging that he came to visit with his army during the hauntings. The witch apparently scared his men so badly that they left quickly, and she also beat a couple, of course. Notably, there was a different edition of this book made later on, called The Black Book. It cleans up some of the grammar errors and cleans up the offensive language, and also includes another book called The Bell Witch, a Mysterious Spirit. According to the place I pirated the Red Book off of, it adds very little to the story, only really having long political or religious speeches about the witch. In fact, the author of the webpage believes this book's author, Charles Bailey Bell, suspects that he was using the witch as a mouthpiece for his own beliefs in these. If you ask for my opinion on how legitimate Ingram's work is, I would tell you I think at least one thing is bogus. I don't know how much, I can't tell you what, but something about it is bogus. Whether that be strange coincidences in legends such as Andrew Jackson being there for no apparent reason, completely glossing over a witch family that appeared every night, no mention of the Bell's first encounter being seeing a weird rabbit-like creature which is stated everywhere else, the apparent return and quick departure of the witch after 7 years, deciding to throw the vial into the fireplace for no reason, which would have made for one single bit of physical evidence for this whole thing, whether or not the witch used it, or honestly everything about the poison vial in general. And I might be an artist, but I don't know how criticizing someone scares them out of their wits enough to run away. That was a lot too, but ultimately my other opinion is that if you want to research this yourself, just pirate the book. It's not only in public domain, but it's so easy to find that you can literally find a free copy in the Wikipedia article's references. And a scan of it is the second result on Google. And to be perfectly honest with you, I wouldn't want to put money towards it anyway. But unfortunately, we're not done, because now we move on to the suspected identity of the spirit. Earlier, I mentioned the spirit also being called Kate, and this is why. It is thought that the neighbor of the Bells was the identity of the witch, this being a woman by the name of Kate Batts. Kate was the head of her own family farm, as her husband was disabled and her 2 sons were described as sickly, but her daughter Mary was well liked. Kate was described as being quite large, making business deals with her neighbors, but always convinced that she was being cheated out of something, known to be quite religious and always using words incorrectly. According to the legend, Kate swore on her deathbed that she would get back at John for his land dispute. In some accounts, the witch admits to being Kate Batts, but unfortunately, actual records seem to suggest otherwise. Kate actually outlived John by a good 22 years, dying in 1842. The witch accusations were more rumors in Robertson County's community. Why this ended up in Ingram's book is unknown, but it probably has something to do with those supposed notes that they didn't want to publish until everyone involved was dead. There's unfortunately no other suggested identities for the spirit, but there is one more piece of this legend worth talking about. A really random piece, really. You see, on the Bell property, there was a cave, which later came to be known as the Bell Witch Cave. Like the property today, it's privately owned and you can pay to tour it. It has its own legend to it, which actually has nothing to do with the original legend and arose long after the fact. Put simply, Betsy Bell and a few friends went exploring in the cave, and one of her friends got stuck in a hole. An invisible voice said, "I'll pull him out," grasping the kids' ankles and lecturing them on reckless cave exploring. And that's the whole legend. There's not a lot to add about it. It's not even actually said it was the Bell Witch who did this. If it was, it would be incredibly out of character for the spirit, especially given how it focuses wrath on Betsy in the main legend. I guess it's a neat side attraction, but sticking on a blatantly made up part of the legend to sell tours rubs me the wrong way. I'd almost call it a tourist trap, really. Fun fact, random. The cave has a 3.9 review average on Google, which I think is very funny.
Oh.
I don't have anything else to add.
3.9.
I am so tired.
Oh my gosh, it's so late for you.
Okay.
I just realized.
Yeah, it is almost 11:30.
Oh my gosh.
And that concludes this video. Finally! It's over. I can be done recording. Thank you for sticking around to the end. Please subscribe if you enjoyed it. It would be extremely helpful right now. I'm trying to improve my video making as quickly as I can, so any support is appreciated. Again, I'm Zee, that's Random, and we'll see you soon.
Bye!